and he says something to the effect of, Conan, he was born in battle. And then it, like, cuts to his mother literally in the middle of battle just giving birth.
Okay, first of all, that is the fastest, most inaccurate C-section I have ever seen.
Oh, yeah.
Like, I was just like, wow, if it was only that simple.
Welcome to Certain Point of View's Another Pass podcast. Be sure to subscribe, rate, and review on iTunes. Just go to certainpov.com.
Hey everyone, welcome to Another Pass podcast. I'm Case Aiken. As always, I have my co-host Sam Alicia.
Hi, everyone.
And today we are having a savage rendition of a movie that we'll be discussing. And no better person could we have on for that than Jason Anarchy.
Hello.
Welcome.
Jason, welcome. Friend of the show, Pat Edwards, connected us. And because you're a game designer and you also like things savage. So real quick, what have you got going on?
Yeah, so I'm most known for doing the Drinking Quest series, which is like half Dungeons and Dragons style game and half drinking game. So it's like a simple adventure, but when your hero dies, you have to chug the remainder of your drink in real life to continue. So there's like real life consequences. And then I'm also a big fan of barbarians in general. I was a big fan of Hero Quest back in the day. He had that huge brawny barbarian on the cover. And so with Drinking Quest, I've got like a kind of a drunk Conan kind of parody on the cover. It really plays up the drinking pints kind of element of barbarians. So his name is Chuglocks. And then, I've got a Kickstarter coming on March 2nd for the first 6 Drinking Quest games in one box. It's called Drinking Quest 6-Pack. So just wanted to plug that quickly.
I love that. That is fantastic.
Like fun.
And this episode is going to be dropping in the middle of that Kickstarter, so anyone listening should go check that out. But as you alluded to, and as I made a couple puns based on it, we are talking about a brutal movie today. We are talking about the 2011 sort of, don't call it a remake, of Conan the Barbarian.
Yeah, it's brutal in more ways than one. This was brutal. This was brutal. Mostly because this is a movie that has everything but a good script. Like, they literally threw the kitchen sink at you. There's even a run away from an explosion scene, guys. Like, I was like, Bad Boys? Die Hard? I didn't know that was going to happen here, but it does. And still I was bored. Bored out of my mind. It was hard. This was a hard one.
Yeah, the script was bad in terms of, like, plotting and what's happening. Everything's just really generic. Like, the dialogue... there's nothing interesting about it. It's like if you just wrote a first draft of a script and just never went back to it. That's kind of what I felt like. Yeah. Just all these familiar beats with like nothing unique about it.
Yeah, and I mean the upside is like that's the purpose of the show.
Yeah. To take another pass.
Yeah, I mean that's the purpose of the show. We're gonna talk about that script. But I mean, because like looking back on this, like I saw this in theaters. Wow. And I remember walking out being like, oh, well, I spent some time in the theater watching this thing. Because I was actually fairly excited when they started talking about it. Like, Jason Momoa was fresh off of Game of Thrones. He, was known for playing a big barbarian at that point. And it was like, oh, okay, cool. Like, all right, they're going to do a Conan the Barbarian. And they kept on talking about how it was going to be more like the books. It was going to be more like the Robert E. Howard Pulp Fiction stories. Like, there was going to be actual magic in a way that, like, they couldn't quite do in the 80s. Like, they had some, but it was... it's just the effects weren't as great. Like, okay, now we've got 2011 money and we've got 2011 special effects and we've got, all of that. And it's going to be more faithful to everything. And it's not going to be a sequel. It's not going to be whatever. And it's not a remake of the 1982. It is more faithful. And you know what it is? It's a fucking remake. Like right down to the fact that we're going to do an opening montage of how Conan grew up and how his parents were killed when his village was invaded. And he's got a blood feud after the guy who happened to kill it. Like, it doesn't matter that they changed some of the details. It's the exact same story. Like, exactly.
Yeah. And it's a revenge flick without any fun and without any, like, sense of heightened fantasy or anything like that. It's just really dark and brutal. And there's some cool moments, but it's kind of a slog to get through.
I think it's like interesting too, because I don't feel like the casting was off on this. Like, you know, sometimes you feel like, well, if you could tweak a person here or like some lines there. I actually feel that like everyone they casted was like fine. I just the actors didn't have anything to work with, like, because the script was just so, and like I still think that like Momoa was fine. He was fine. Like body build, like even kind of like his dude attitude fits the original Pulp Fiction kind of world. So like that, you know, that's not something that takes you completely out of it. But like, oh my God, like it just, I don't know, like it just falls apart. Like the middle is so sluggish, and there's no character connections at all. Like it's kind of weird, because you should feel something. I mean, something, right? This is a revenge story. You should want him to like get his revenge.
Yeah. I mean, this movie is 2011 as fuck. And I don't think I could process this at the time when I saw it, but now with hindsight, I look back, like we recently talked about G.I. Joe: The Rise of Cobra, which I did not see at the time because G.I. Joe just wasn't really like my franchise, but I watched it more recently for this show, and there's like half the cast is shared between it, and we're kind of in the same ballpark of special effects being smooth and like not like there's a lot of like earth tones to everything, so that, you know, you can kind of make it blend a little bit better without having to put quite as much effort into it. And then all the color correction makes everything orange and teal.
Yeah.
And it's just, we're at that exact window when like Michael Bay did really well on Transformers, and every movie was trying to be kind of like that in some regards. And this was just another attempt at reviving a property with the same sort of set of like fine actors, but like that's all. Like everyone's fine in this movie, no one's great in this movie, no one stands out as being amazing. And then they have the most cliche thing you could possibly imagine, which is they open with a Morgan Freeman voiceover that is nothing but exposition, like way too much exposition.
Yeah, not only is it really awkward and like kind of meta to have a Morgan Freeman voiceover, but then like half an hour into the movie, like roughly, is when you first actually see like adult Conan. And then he comes back to do another narration once the movie's already been going for quite a while. And it's so jarring and weird. And then also back to the beginning of the movie, Sam, you mentioned not having an emotional connection. Like right away, I was not buying it, because it starts with the Morgan Freeman narration, and he says something to the effect of, Conan, he was born in battle. And then it like cuts to his mother literally in the middle of battle just giving birth.
Okay, first of all, that is the fastest, most inaccurate C-section I have ever seen.
Oh yeah.
Like I was just like, wow, if it was only that simple. Like literally, and you know, honestly, I'm gonna say 2011, if you haven't seen it, don't even watch it. This is not spoilers. But Ron Perlman, Conan's dad, basically takes and stabs his mother in the abdomen, rips it open, and rips the baby out. Like he's literally born in battle.
Right, and then he Rafiki raises it to the sun.
Yeah. Oh, right. Well, yeah.
He
that's when we get the title drop.
Yeah. And then he puts it in her arm. He's like, "What do you want to name him?" He's like, "Conan." And then she dies. Like, probably because of the improper cesarean done. Like, she's bleeding out now.
Yeah. Oh man. And like everybody in the battle is just like, yeah. Oh, that's cool. We'll leave those people alone for a while. They're giving birth over there. And it's like,
you know, it's a shame that they actually had this scene and they didn't put something about Kaler Zim being like, no man of woman born could kill him or something, just so that we could have that fucking thing in there, because he's untimely ripped just like Macduff.
Oh, yeah, it's one thing about this movie, I feel like the director, who has some good stuff, and I looked him up, and he's known more for like slasher horror films, and he's had a few good ones. He did a really good Friday the 13th remake. But I feel like this movie doesn't have like a style of its own. I feel like it's always referencing other movies that the director thought was cool. Like you mentioned the Rafiki thing, you know, the Lion King holding up the baby in the air. Like that happens like right away in the movie. And it's like, okay, he saw that Lion King, he thought that was cool. You know, he saw some shots of the Shire and Lord of the Rings, and so he made Conan's village kind of look like that. And I was just picking up on all these little kind of references that just really took me out of it, because I feel like the director is, he seems like a typical fan of movies, but he didn't kind of know, how he wanted to present this story in his own way.
Yeah. Like, that's what I mean. Like, this film has everything. Like, do you want a too quick cesarean? Yes. Do you want a snake monster? Maybe octopus? Yeah, we got that. Virgin sacrifice? Well, not close, but close enough. She's pure blood. Like...
Wait, she's like, pure blood, and then Conan sleeps with her in the middle of the movie, and that affects nothing that ever happens.
Nothing. It has nothing to do with her virginity. It's just like implied, but it doesn't matter. It's just like her origin, like her DNA, I guess. Like you want a priest that stands up for like his priestesses that live there, who none of the other ones are purebloods at all. So I assume that it's all made to just hide her. And then he gets killed. You want a scary goth chick? Check. Like
not just any scary goth chick. Rose McGowan is a scary goth chick.
Yes, I did. I'm going to say good things. I did enjoy the costumes. In general, I felt that, like, yeah, were they kind of normal, like, derivative, like, fantasy costumes? Sure. But they were detailed, and I appreciated it.
Yeah, costuming was pretty good in this movie overall. Like, here's the thing. Aesthetics were definitely front and center on this. The director, Marcus Nispel, was primarily a music video director before doing this. He did a couple of slasher movies, and he did Pathfinder, which critically was panned, commercially bombed. I remember liking it, but I haven't watched it since I saw it in theaters. But I mean, that was a Conan Urban Barbarian movie also, which yeah, it was kind of in the same style of being like, we're gonna do like, this is so badass and music video-esque kind of sequences, but it's going to be Vikings fighting Native Americans. This is also doing like kind of, we're going to do music video style sequences, but it's going to be Conan the Barbarian lore.
Yeah,
I have a thesis about this movie.
Sure.
This is the same thing as the Tim Burton Planet of the Apes.
Oh.
This is someone taking a property that exists and saying, I know the following things about it, and pop culture discusses the following things about it. Mm-hmm. I want to do really cool versions of scenes from either the existing material or stuff that we've talked about that we never got a chance to watch. So things like Conan being born on the battlefield, which is like a reference to the books, like the all the stuff with like more like kind of savage kind of monsters, kind of the various like, like Conan's time as a pirate, all this stuff. It's like, if you wanted to do a music video about Conan the Barbarian, all the footage is in this movie. Like, you could absolutely take that and like put it all together in some sort of tight, like, 3-minute montage that sets up like just how fucking badass Conan the Barbarian is. But it doesn't actually do anything to make those moments, like those key snippets that you have like in your mind's eye, connect as a story.
Yeah, I can see that. That makes sense to me, because it really does, like, there's just so much. When I was mentioning all the things, I forgot about the pirate ship fight. I mean, everything. It has everything.
That was one of the moments I kind of liked. I liked the pirate ship, and I wanted more of like Conan on the high seas having some adventures. That could have been fun. But yeah, it was just one of a million different elements that are there, and they just don't kind of mix with everything very well.
Listen, Conan traveling around, like, freeing slaves, like, bringing them to the pirate island, that would have been a great movie. Like, that would have been totally fun. Drinking beer, cracking heads open, then you learn about the secret. You set up a whole, like, possible, like, trilogy kind of thing. Like, oh, that's the guy who killed my dad. That could be the end. I know we're not at pitch time. Sorry, too soon. but like, honestly, like, that was one of, like, that was fun, and it felt like very Conan-esque, and it felt different than the original movies that we are clearly all familiar with, enough that it wouldn't have felt like a remake or a sequel. It would have felt like a pulp story about Conan, just one in the series kind of thing.
Yeah, I feel like this movie is, because it doesn't have a clear thesis, it falls back on the easy narratives of doing like an origin story. And that is why it's such a hard movie to make work as it is, because Conan's stories are all, here's an adventure that happened, and then we jump to a different time in his life for a different adventure. Like Robert E. Howard described Conan the Barbarian as being a series of stories told around a campfire. Like each one is from the vantage point of future Conan, heavy with the crown of Aquilonia on his head, talking about his glory days to his subjects or to people he trusts, and like talking about those different adventures. And that's why none of the stories weren't written in a chronological order. They were written at different, like each story would be different points in his life and kind of bounce around. And this movie should have done that. This movie should have just been like, here's a story from his early days as a pirate, and not have to worry about like, he's got a blood vengeance story, because we've already seen that. And that the Arnie movies have such a huge shadow on this that it's impossible not to draw comparisons. And when you do the same narrative beats, they're like those shadows become so much darker on this movie. Like you can't help but compare it.
I think I like your approach with the different stories. That would have been a cool movie. You don't see a lot of movies with, little individual kind of snippets in them, but that would have fit the director, who's used to telling, small stories in his music videos. And he's got a really impressive list too. Yeah, I remember looking that up, and it's like, oh, I remember watching all these huge music videos in the 90s, like, Spice Girls and stuff like that. Like, this guy did a lot of things. But yeah, I think that would play to his strength. And, especially if there's a pirate story in there. Yeah, I think that'd be awesome if it was like a compilation of Conan stories, the movie. And, it wouldn't be in the 1982 movie's shadow anymore.
Yeah, and spoiler for my pitch, there's a little bit of that in here.
Well, but I think also the stories always end with but that's a story for another day, right? Like my dad had a whole collection, so I used to read all the Conan stories, much to my mother's sadness, because she was like, no, don't, you're a young lady. But I think that it's like something that would definitely kind of just fit the bill and work with the character really well and kind of get away. I also think that one of the things that they did was that they kind of leaned into this gruesome realism and leaned away from camp to try to get away from the 80s versions. And I feel like it hurt them more than it served them, because there are some really cool things, but it just wasn't, I don't know. There's something iconic about the way that the 80s camp was able to kind of embrace pulp that I feel like with this kind of feeling and rhythm, it kind of did them a disservice. Sometimes you just have to embrace the absurdity of things. I don't think this movie did that.
Yeah, there's a lot of CGI blood in this movie, and I could really have gone for a couple shots of someone just holding a blood plaque clearly in his hand and exploding it when you get quote unquote stabbed.
Yeah, it's there was just so much unnecessary gore and brutality that it either needed to focus on moments that mattered to drive the narrative, or if it's going to have that much blood, it needed to be campy. It needed to have some fun to kind of balance it out. It was just really one note with the constant brutality.
Yeah, there's really cool moments. You remember when he goes to the guard door and he's holding the guy's head. I would have just and then the guy's head, the bottom's CGI. I was like, no, just get a freaking head. Put it in blood. Let me see it be dumb. I don't know. Just a lot of that. I kind of missed that about the 80s versions.
That part with the head at the door, that was a part that was almost funny. It was wait, are they going for a joke here? And it was just, I almost had a laugh, but it was, again, the movie's so confusing and you don't know what you're supposed to be feeling.
Exactly. And I feel like they should have leaned into the laugh. That should have been a joke. There should have been a joke there. There should have been, because it's also it's just for the most part, the movie's very humorless too. There's no one that really I know that sometimes comedic sidekicks or things like that can ruin a movie. They can go too far. But there was really none of that here. There was nothing to kind of give you any kind of shifts or, you know, highs and lows. There was just all one tone all of the time.
Well, I want to push back on that a little bit because there's several spots that are set up as comedic beats. It's just you don't know where you are in the movie. Like when they're like, "Where's whatever the noseless guy's." Like when Conan gets arrested and he's like, "Where's what's his face? The guy who's missing his nose," and it's like he's indisposed, and they cut to him torturing. Like it's like smash cut straight to a torture scene.
Yeah.
Like that is paced as a perfect joke, but it's not a funny scene.
Yeah. It's just not, the jokes weren't funny. They didn't land.
Right, yeah.
I was just like, yeah, no case. It's not funny. I get,
right. No, exactly.
I get what you're saying, but...
Right, but I'm just saying, like, they set it up to have these kind of comedic beats, and if you're in the right mood, those would be funny, but, like, the scenes just don't really work that way. The camera and the cuts are comedic. The actual things happening are not. Like, the delivery isn't, the way that the actual framing isn't. Just, like I said, just the pacing on it.
Right, so it's not, like, cohesive, like, what the message is, which leads us back to, we're confused. We're confused the whole time we're watching this movie.
What did you guys think about the first third? Like after Conan is born in the most violent and improbable C-section possible, the period where Conan is a child. What did you think about that whole set of sequences?
Well, worst part of the movie, hands down. That opening was it was the worst offender for I think most of the things we're talking about. Because there was so much brutality. So yeah, the weird C-section in battle, and then Conan just randomly killing all those I don't know, like savages or whatever they were.
Yeah, the ones who had like animal voices. Yeah.
Yeah, I was like, why? I was like, maybe they're a humanoid species and they're not necessarily humans. They just look like humans because they had animal voice. Like the sound was an animal, like definitely.
Yeah, and that was yet another thing that didn't work. It was just jarring and, like, just everything kept taking me out of it. And then another one of just the worst shots was when he comes back with all their heads. And it's like, the scene is awkward, and it doesn't show, like, clearly he's a mighty warrior destined for greatness. It's like, whoa, he's got a bunch of heads there. And it's like, I don't know.
Yeah, he's kind of fucked up.
He might be a psychopath.
Yeah. When I saw this in theaters, I remember being like, okay, I see what they're doing. They're establishing he's so fucking badass. And then like rewatching it's like this, and this is where like a theory started to form that this movie actually works very well from the perspective of Conan is telling the story after the fact, because it makes your headcanon work for this movie a lot better, because he's just like, I was attacked by all these savages and look how fucking badass I was, and I even kept the egg, and it like, and then like it was a really sad moment with my dad, and then like I freed all these slaves and these women wanted to sleep with me because I'm awesome. Like there's that element. Even the later scene where he actually hooks up with Tamara with like the worst fucking line in this movie of the like hang on, I have it written down. Where he says, I live, I love, I slay, and I am content. And then she just throws herself at him, and they have just like a weird sex scene because like we have no idea where they are, and it's just like all of a sudden they're just like some sort of place like by themselves, like when she is being hunted on land and sea.
That whole thing just did like honestly, like that whole setup is horrible because the friend, like he leaves and he's just like, take care of her to his friend, and his friend's like, you got it. And he gets off the boat and he goes walking, Conan's out of sight, and his friend goes, he left his map, and he might as well have said, wink, wink, go get him, tiger. Come back when you're done.
Yeah. Again, this works way better if you're thinking that someone is telling the story and like just is a misogynist, and that's why he's explaining the story this way.
And so like, but then she like leaves, and I'm like, what? Wait, what? How are you protecting her? Like this makes no sense. And jumping back to the first third, one of the things I will do is that I think it would have worked, like that scene with him just decided to confront I'm going to call them humanoids, the humanoid animal creatures in the forest, is that like everyone else in his village decides like, we're gonna go back. So Conan has a moment where he can choose to not confront them, but as a child he runs headlong in to confront them into their trap and then defeat them. And I was just like, it would have worked a little bit better if he was protecting someone in his village or something of that, magnitude kind of thing, only to like leave him a shred of humanity. And I get it. Like, they were like, he's the hunter. The hunters were hunting him and he was prey, but he's not. But he wasn't, because he had an opportunity to leave and he decided to continue to go and run after them and hunt them down.
He very coldly murdered all those innocent savages. Like, it was just, it was like a psychotic choice. Yeah. He needed his back against the wall, like defending himself or protecting someone. Exactly.
Everyone got out. Like, everyone was like, oh, those guys are here. Let's go back. Let's go back. There's actually someone that shouts, come on, Conan, or something of that way. And he doesn't. He looks back at his pals and he turns around and he just runs headlong into danger.
Yeah, that whole scene could have actually used... So, the movie both... Everyone talks too much and also doesn't explain enough. So this is one of those spots where this could have used way more exposition of how important this like rite of passage is. And not just Ron Perlman, like kind of like in a monotonous way explaining like Sumerians don't thirst for anything besides blood. If they need something, it's only steel, or whatever his lines are.
Yeah.
Like somehow Ron Perlman could have been... Like, Ron Perlman I love, and he's just not as exciting as he should be here.
Yeah, I feel like he doesn't know what to do in the movie. Yeah, he stood out to me as, he was showing up, he was saying his lines, but he just kind of seemed confused. Because he's supposed to be this battle-hardened warrior, that's how you see him in the beginning. But every instance after that, he's just straight-up loving father. And he doesn't seem to have the, the intensity or the discipline or something. He seems too soft, for lack of a better word. And maybe some of the people in the movie were kind of realizing what kind of movie it was going to be while they were making it. And maybe they weren't giving it 100%. That's another thought I had while I was watching it.
I feel like I don't know if I want to say that he played soft. I feel like he played tired. I felt like he was tired of everyone's bullshit in the town. Like, I felt like he was like, all right, everybody line up. We're going to do this because this is what we do. Please. Like, it was like he was like at the DMV or something. This is what we do as Sumerians, blah, blah, blah. Oh, Conan, you're here. All right. Well, you're too young to do this, but fuck it, kid. Here you go. Go into the woods. Good luck. Don't break the egg. I'll be here waiting for you all when you get back. Does anyone have a beer for me? Like, I just feel like he was so like, why do I have to govern this space? Like.
Yeah, like Ron Perlman's character should have been like, it should have been like an event. This mighty warrior is here and he's going to oversee this ritual and he's going to give a huge speech. And, it should have been a much bigger deal. But yeah, tired is a good way to describe it. It's it doesn't have the intensity that it needs.
Yeah, like this is one of those spots where the desire to do the Robert E. Howard stuff and the desire to call back to the movie that everyone knows are like really at odds. Like, the Robert E. Howard stuff, like having like tales of like, oh yeah, he was birthed on battle and he like had these tests of manhood where he was so badass, like stuff that you could tell a story about, and it's like, fine, sure, okay, cool, someone's talking about it, but we're not like really watching it, or at least we're not watching this extended scene. That's one thing. But then the loving dad, and then this is like the village getting raided and all that stuff. This creates this like very pastoral kind of vibe for the Sumerians that doesn't fit the dialogue about them being these hardened warriors or anything like that. Like, why are all the other barbarians more barbaric than the titular barbarian of the Barbarian movie? Like, that's such a weird part about this about this movie specifically. Like, you can buy it in the Arnold Schwarzenegger movie because his village got destroyed. He was raised as a slave away from his society. And like, you get some of that here, but like, they try to paint the picture of Sumerians as being that barbarian tribe, which is not in the Schwarzenegger movie. It's in but it is in the Robert E. Howard stuff, because like that his parents don't get killed like that, like they or rather like his village doesn't get destroyed. Like that whole like revenge story is not a big part of his origin. His origin is that he was a barbarian who participated in raids and like would be part of those war parties, and eventually traveled south and like started becoming a pirate. Like it's this desire to have this, he's the good guy because he had these horrible things happen to him and he comes from these like nice like village folk.
Yeah.
But then also still paint them as like violent warriors and so forth.
Yeah. I mean, it's also Lord of the Rings, right? Where
yeah, the music callback is like exactly Lord of the Rings happens.
Like there's actually like a lot, like even like the mask being separated and having to be rejoined together. Like it feels like, you know, like it's just like, and then they hid it because they couldn't fully destroy all the pieces, which is not fully explained to you about why they wouldn't just grind down all of the bone that makes the mask, which was like immediately my brain was like, wait, but like, why didn't you just grind that? Like it's bone, like just grind it down. Like, why are you keeping pieces of the mask? Like, clearly this is trouble, guys. You know, like it's like in Jurassic Park when they're like, we're going to clone a dinosaur. I'm like, yeah, that's a problem. Same thing with this mask. And so like right away, you've got like, again, like you said, Case, it's like almost every other movie is in this movie. Like, and so it's like one of those things. And you're right. It doesn't make sense for it to be like this pastoral town where everyone's just so like, it's just like, we're just going to, you know, harvest some crops. There aren't even crops. It's just like straw huts all around. And it's just like, I don't know. Where's his stone throne?
Yeah. I have a question just from a narrative standpoint. Why do they find the last piece of the crown in the flashback? And then we have a time jump of presumably 10 years, roughly,
yes.
Right? To this time.
My theory is that's how long
only now is
it took them to find the pureblood. That's my theory, because it's the only excuse you can make. I mean, what other?
That's the in-universe explanation. But like from a standpoint of like the ticking clock, like doesn't it just seem like, oh, how convenient that like it took you 10 to 15 years to find the pureblood after assembling the crown? Like, shouldn't there be like devastation all over? Shouldn't this be like an infamous thing if he's been tearing apart the nation or the continent or whatever? I mean, like,
yes.
If it's Hyboria and they're using the actual maps of Hyboria, the continent is weird. Africa, Europe, and Asia are all just one giant landmass on that map because the Mediterranean is dried up. And so it's this like huge spread of land, and the tales of Kaler Zim should be epic. Like they say that he's become like a king as opposed to just like some like local warlord in the interim, but this should be huge. Like his legend should be massive, and Conan should have a very clear idea of who he is, as opposed to like just finding out about him just in time to go save the princess.
Yeah, just learning his name too. Like his name should be infamous. It should be everywhere. Everyone should know. Like people should be hiding from him and quaking in fear. That's not happening. And you would think, right? Like that he would be turning, even if you say like, oh, he hasn't found the pure blood yet. He would have destroyed several temples at this point. He would have destroyed several cities and all sorts of things. So you are right.
Yeah, it's like, why not just have it be an early piece? Like, maybe the first piece he finds, and then, like, he's had this whole quest in the interim, he's been assembling the crown. And now that the crown is assembled, well, now shit, we need to figure out where the pureblood is because it's dangerous. Like, it's so weird that he gets almost to the finish line at the very start of the movie in the flashback, and then we're just left to be like, I guess he just didn't do a very good job for a while. Oh, now he's a threat. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
And the movie shows that, you know, it definitely shows that he's the bad guy. He's the big bad of the movie. But you never really get much of a sense of why he's unique, or, you know, you never care about him and you're not particularly afraid of him. And there's a scene between him and his sorceress right hand it's the worst scene for exposition in the whole movie. It's kind of in the middle and they're just talking about plot stuff. And it was Yeah. Oh.
Wait, is this when his daughter tries to fuck him?
Is the wait
the incest? Because it has everything.
Oh, God.
This movie has everything. Incest.
Game of Thrones had incest, so this movie had incest.
Caesareans.
Yeah.
Lord of the Ring-esque journeys. Priests getting killed. Everything. Explosions.
Yeah. This is a last season episode of Game of Thrones, basically.
You're right. That's a really awkward scene. Go on.
Yeah. So the villains are just really poor, and you know as the viewer that okay, they're supposed to be the bad guy, but yeah, you're never feeling that. Like you're not feeling anything else in the movie. And yeah, the incest was probably there because Game of Thrones, and then there's a few Game of Thrones actors in it.
I mean, also the end of it, like the final boss battle is terrible. Like, we're talking about this guy not being a great, like, villain overall. The way that he dies is sad. It's sad.
Spoiler alert, he gets Hans Grubered pretty hard.
Crying out his wife's name.
Yeah, and I mean, I could live with that a little bit more if it felt like Conan did something outside of the realm of expectations to get into that position. Because like we established early on that Zim is a capable fighter, or I say early on. It's like 2/3 into the movie because the flashback stuff is basically Act 1. Like,
yeah.
It's a lot. It's a very long sequence before we actually get to Momoa as Conan. But when he confronts him and he has the dumb fight with the twin blade thing that he's got that is like a double scimitar on a hinge that turns into like a Darth Maul style lance, and then it then also becomes two separate weapons, and it reforms in ways that are both impossible and impractical. Because
this movie has everything. Keep going.
Yeah, it does. Like we established that he's a better fighter than Conan, which is kind of insane, and like could be a big stakes thing if that was every fight up until this point Conan clearly just can't lose, and then all of a sudden he's fighting someone who actually can beat him, and that's like kind of scary. If at the end now even supercharged and it's more desperate and Conan can barely win or barely can like hold his own at all, and at the very end has to do something that's like kind of insane, such as not saving Tamara at the end. Like maybe that would have been a better moment for him to then get the Hans Grubering, because he's less crazy than Conan, and that's ultimately how crazy beats big every time. It's just weird that Conan saves the day in all ways at the end of this movie, and doesn't ultimately prove himself to be truly barbaric.
Yeah, and with that part as well, I just want to talk about how this movie just keeps referencing other movies. So the way he beats Hans Gruber in the end, it's a flashback to earlier in the movie where he's fighting with his father on the ice, and Conan makes some cocky move, and his father's like, "Ugh," and he hits the ice, and he falls in the ice and teaches him a lesson. That's straight up from Batman Begins when Ra's al Ghul's fighting with Bruce Wayne. But that's how he beats the final boss of the movie. He's like, "You're on shaky ground," or something, and he the stone falls out from under him, and yeah, it was not satisfying to see that final villain defeated that way. I'm like, maybe there could have been a creative kill at the end. Maybe this is all building up to, something cool, in the final beat. But no, that was not quite the case.
This movie is... The worst part is that it's boring. Like, ultimately, you don't feel a lot when you walk away from it. Like, yeah, there's an action scene, but it doesn't really excite you that much. Yeah, there's stuff like there's all the trappings of a Conan movie, but you don't really care. I feel like all the actors are either wasted or some I'm just not sure about, frankly, just in general. Like Rachel Nichols as Tamara, I don't know if she's a good actress or not because I've never seen her in anything good, but I'm not sure if that's her fault. Yeah,
I think all the actors in this movie can get a pass. It's I think for the most part everyone's trying their best. And Momoa's the best. I think he's a good enough Conan. He's fun to watch, but there's not enough of him in the movie. Like, if you wanted to make this better, it's like just completely get rid of the first half an hour of the flashback sequence, and just have more of Conan in a Conan movie.
Like Rose McGowan, I think, is probably the most fun part about this movie because she's like really playing it up. I hate that we see her as a young like the young version of her.
Yeah, that was weird.
Like that's such a Star Wars prequels kind of thing. Where
yeah, it's very. I don't know. I didn't hate it so much. Like, it's fine because it kind of introduces her powers, like what she can do in a weird way. Because you're not really sure what she can do.
With the same like weird little finger blades on her hands. Like, it's just a scaled down version of the same character.
Listen, sometimes people don't grow out of their phases, Case, and I don't think you should be judging her for her fashion choices.
Fair enough. I am wearing a Masters of the Universe shirt.
Yeah. Some of us are wearing Wonder Woman apparel right now. So, but I do think that it gives you a chance to kind of see what she can do, and that, like, she's, kind of scary. I think it would have been better to see more how her power grew. And, she was the only one that looked like she was having any fun at all. Like, other than a few swings, like, from Momoa, in some action scenes, he was like, yeah, I'm having fun, I'm cracking heads. But other than those two, like, I really feel like people were like, this is a paycheck. I'm showing up. I'm saying these lines. I'm going to be paid. My mortgage will be fine. It's pretty much how I felt about, like, it's really, I think also the total onslaught all the time of just like action, gore, action, because the movie is so one note. There were times where, oh my God, you know how long it took me to watch this movie? I will be very honest with you guys. It took me 3 hours to watch this movie because I kept having to rewind because I would get bored. I would grab my phone. I would start going on like Twitter or TikTok or something. And I'd be like, no, I don't know what's happening. And I'd have to rewind. This is the longest movie I've ever watched. But because I could not stay focused enough to watch it. It was so boring.
Yeah, it was
terrible.
I had to take breaks too, and it was like and there are a few parts where I rewinded it because I couldn't hear what was happening because the sound mix was bad, which is yet another problem with the movie. But I just wanted to throw out a comparison to another Momoa movie. This movie has a pretty good similarity to Aquaman. So in Aquaman, it's a good fast moving superhero movie, but there's this kind of gimmick where people will be talking in the movie and then there'll be an explosion out of nowhere and then the action starts. So it's not played for comedy in this one, but pacing wise, this movie also has that, where it's just there'll be a talking scene and then all of a sudden action out of nowhere. Oh, okay. And there are a lot of action scenes. Some of them are good, a lot of them are not, but it's I don't know. I just wanted to throw that in there. That was another weird thing about it.
Yeah, that was a movie that had fun with it. Yes. And you can see Momoa's charisma gets a lot better at that point.
Yes.
Like, my biggest issue with Momoa throughout this movie is that he talks too much. Like, he's got this broy attitude, which could be fine. Like, it can be a Conan kind of vibe. But, like, he just keeps fucking dropping lines that are like, this isn't goddamn necessary. Like, wouldn't it be way more badass when, like, the pirate ship gets boarded by troops if he just kills the guy, and we don't have him being like, this is for all the Sumerians of my village line. Like, when he confronts Zim and he like holds up his hands like, you left me to die while I washed my father. And then of course I live, I love, I slay.
He did not slay that line.
And I am content.
Yeah.
Like the deliveries just aren't great, and like we're at this point we weren't used to Momoa as a talking actor. Like, unless you were a big Baywatch fan, like you weren't familiar with what he sounded like speaking English. And Conan the Barbarian works really well as being a non-talking kind of character. Arnold Schwarzenegger infamously could not say a lot in English at the time, and so they only gave him like 3 or 4 lines. Or 3 or 4 lines with Valeria, and like total is like almost nothing. I mean, relative to like what most stars of a movie would be.
Yeah.
And they tried to compete with that and have a smarter Conan in this movie, or like a more overtly intelligent Conan, but I don't think they succeed.
Yeah, there's definitely a few moments where you hear Momoa's kind of surfer dude kind of delivery, And I think that's why the line about being content fails so hard. It's just he just sounds like such a bro sometimes. And yeah, we wanted Conan, not Bronan. Like, I don't know. that joke is the best thing about the movie for me that I just made there. That's the most value I got out of it.
I'm looking at my notes from my first rewatch that I did a couple nights ago, and yeah, Samaria's too idyllic. I hate that they use CG when they do the forging sequence on the blade. Like, it just looks bad, and it compares negatively to the original movie. Like, forging steel is not by itself a huge, like, this is important for Conan the Barbarian kind of thing. Like, it was used well in the original movie. It, like, steel swords are valuable, sure, like, you can do some stuff with that, but to be like, that's the mystery of steel, and like to have all these callbacks that then don't fucking play in any way for the rest of the movie, like, they don't matter aside from him getting the sword later on being like, Sumerian steel's the best steel. Like, it doesn't matter to the story. It could have been any sword, it could whatever. And in fact, it's a lamer version of the one from the Arnold Schwarzenegger movie, because in that one the sword gets broken because it's actually not that good of a steel thing. Like, this whole thing that he had been longing for ultimately wasn't as good as he kind of remembered it being. And in this movie, it is like the perfect sword. He is Conan is a real angsty teen Mary Sue. Let's see. We meet the party rogue. Oh, hey, it's some Gorn. Oh, the sets. I swear to God, they just reused all the sets from Rome for the monastery.
Yes, absolutely.
Like, every time we saw a thing, I was like, I'm very positive I've seen lots of scenes set in this exact, like, location. I'm like, the main area I think was like the forum that they had on Rome. Like, there's like a spot where it's like the same like Senate area that was both used in that and also in 300. Like, I'm like, oh my God, I'm seeing like all these structures that I definitely recognize from way too many things.
Yeah, everywhere. Like, there was a lot of reusing of like set scenes. Like, I was just like, I feel like it kind of took me out of it sometimes. Like, I was just like, where? I wanted this to feel like its own world, and it really didn't. It just felt like it was borrowing from all the other worlds. Yeah, even with how sparse like the old Conan movies were, because they're not like the most elaborate sets. I still felt like that was more their own world and more creative than the settings in this particular film. Like, I'm pretty sure one of this felt like the Scorpion King set as well at one moment.
Right, this like just felt like generic fantasy settings. They didn't like really feel like there was a culture to the world.
Yeah. Nothing was really, like, thought out. It was just like, oh, like, now they're, like, in a deserty kind of place, so we're gonna put lots of sand everywhere, and they're gonna fight here.
They needed more stuff that, you know, showed, these are the barbarian villages, and this is how they live, and now they're in this city, and, you know, this is what's unique about this place, and here's Castle Evil, where the bad guys are. You know, it's just, yeah, everything just kind of blended together, and nothing looked bad. Like, you know, it was, you know, on a technical level, there was a lot of good stuff to see there. Just, you know, yeah, when you don't feel it, nothing matters, though. So
this was an element that I get why they did it, and I appreciate the choices to do this. So in the sense that this is just a remake, in the original movie, the Thulsa Doom's lieutenants were important characters who showed up later in the movie as sort of like little mini bosses for Conan to fight, and they doubled down on that in this movie. Like, Zim has like all these lieutenants, like leaders of different barbarian groups that he's commanding, that show up at different points. Like, there's the guy who gets his nose cut off. There's like the guy who's like the more barbaric one that they trebuchet. There's the one who boards the party, or like boards the ship, who is supposed to be more of like a southern kind of like warrior type. And I get why they did that, and like it's nice to sort of like flesh that out from. Like, it feels like a video game, having like little mini bosses that they fight throughout, like how you would pace it out. But none of them change. Like like, again, this is like a weird spot where it's just like, this movie is dumber than the 82 movie. And like, that is frustrating, because you would think that with the benefit of hindsight, you would do a smarter script. Like, all of these lieutenants are exactly the same 10 to 15 years later as they were when they raided the Sumerian village. Every single one's wearing the same clothes, adorned the same way, wielding the same weapons. They have not changed in any way. And sure, people can change. People can do. The little girl can keep her fucking same necromancer clothes that she had as a child, or like like her easy bake necromancer look that she had, and now she's like top chef. It's all the goddamn same.
She had very definite style, but also like, how will the audience know that they're their same case? Because we're dumb.
That's the annoying part, because it was like, okay, well, all these people have become corrupt and now are like aristocrats or heads of the church of the snakes in the first movie. Like it felt like they had all like used the time to become more powerful and more entrenched in their forces, as opposed to just being marauders. They haven't changed in the interim, which makes it even weirder that, god damn it, we have a flashback that like sets up all this shit, and then so much fucking time has to pass before we get to the actual story.
Yeah, nothing has changed at all. And just Jason Momoa and our little favorite goth, Rose McGowan.
And effectively, it just becomes a movie about just systematically going through sub-bosses. Like, that's what the time is used for. Like, you get a half an hour crappy origin story, and then it's just, okay, video game sub-boss killing, and then you get the last boss. It's...
Yeah. And hunting down for the name, too. Like, it's, like, not even, like, you know, like, that's why you're going through the sub-bosses, partially, is to get the name of the man who should be famous, because he's got the mask that potentially is going to allow him to conquer the world already from when you were a child.
Yeah, and the guy with the octopus mask, too, and the giant octopus near the end, I feel like they didn't do enough with that. I feel like if you're going to put a giant octopus in your movie, like, there needs to be, you know, Conan needs to kill it, you know? It's like...
Yeah.
It's just kind of there, and they never really say much about it.
Here's the thing I really want if we're going to do a big special effects Conan movie, which is that there's no fucking giant animals and, like, weird shit in this movie. Like, there's a couple people who are adorned to look like borderline not human, and in the like, Wikipedia calls out a few people from unidentified humanoid race, as opposed to being just like human from this region. And that's fine. Robert E. Howard set the whole Hyborian era before the last ice age, that with this idea that there were other types of hominids out there that had more ape-like features, and some even devolved into more ape-like things, because Robert E. Howard was not a scientist. And that the whole makeup of everything was different, but that just based on the setting, there should be fucking saber-tooth tigers, there should be goddamn mammoths. Like, we should have big fucking animals that aren't just the animals that we know about today. Like, the fact that everything could just as easily be set in a post-apocalyptic future from now, which was originally the plan for the Arnold Schwarzenegger movie, like, that could... It's fine, but, like, come on, man. We're making a movie where we actually have CG budget to have, like, weird octopus creatures, like, and you can't have other shit just be, like, kind of wild. Like, have one of the groups be, like, actually, like, ape-looking. Like, have them be supposedly Homo erectus. Have them be, fuck, have Piltdown, man. Just double down on bad science. But like, have a world that, in addition to all the magic, has just weird animals. Like, have fucking Game of Thrones comparison aside, have direwolves. Like, have shit out there. Like, why not?
Yeah, the whole movie didn't have a lot of fun, and it's like they should have been more creative and had fun with the creatures and, you know, the types of encounters that Conan has. Because everything is literally just, you know, going through the sub-bosses. And they were all generic humans. Except for the sorceress. They were at least trying to do something different with her.
But they also wasted her. Like,
They wasted everyone.
They wasted everyone. They wasted everything. There's just so much wasted potential. I think that's the big thing about this movie, is where it's really, really, really disappointing, is that, like, on the surface, I guess it's fine. Like, it's boring, and the script needs work, and people showed up and they did what they had to do, but it could have been so much more. It's not even the worst film I've ever seen. Like, I wouldn't even say that, like, oh my God, it was the worst movie I've ever seen. It's not. I've seen far worse. But it's just so much wasted potential, just so much sloppiness. It's just a lazy movie. It's lazy overall. Just the whole execution of it is lazy.
Yeah, I completely agree there.
Yeah.
It's I don't know how they went in with that script. Maybe it was rushed or something, but it was. I felt like that was the first mistake, and then it was certainly not the last. And maybe maybe they knew they had a bad script, and they're like, okay, well, the movie's got to get made. You know, there was just no effort to make anything. You know, to make the audience feel anything, or maybe there was an effort, but nothing succeeded.
It's like it is what it is. It should have been the tagline for this movie.
Basically,
like,
yeah.
it does exist. It is.
Well, and like that's the thing that made me angriest about this movie when I saw it, which is that they hyped it so much about being like, this ain't your daddy's Conan. We're doing it's more faithful to the books. It's more real, and it's not any of those things. It's just a bland remake. It's just the Tim Burton Planet of the Apes to the original.
It's so funny. The reason I didn't go see it was because they were like, it's not your daddy's Conan. And I was just like, that's okay. I'll stick with my Arnold. I'm good.
Yeah.
His Conan's my Conan. I'm good.
Yeah, like this is 2011, so Schwarzenegger was still governor, but like how great would this movie have been if it actually was Schwarzenegger telling the story at the beginning of the movie and it flashes back to Momoa, and so we get like that as a framing device rather than, you know, like instead of Morgan Freeman, we get Momoa or we get Schwarzenegger doing the iconic, because like they are directly aping this like the 82 movie by opening with the like in the time after Atlantis was submerged like whole bit. Like,
yeah, we're not your daddy's Conan, but you know it's a remake of your daddy's Conan in a way, and the ways they tried to be more faithful to the books would basically just boil down to gore. The problem is though with the books, you get Robert E. Howard's like great use of language. Like he was really stylish with his words. And then this movie, you know, doesn't have a consistent style or a style that works, and it doesn't try to have a new take, you know, on Conan with how the movie's made. It's just stuff happening, you know, and nothing. There's nothing to hold it together or make you think about the character in a different way.
Yeah, there's also no consistency of language. Like now that you mentioned that, like in terms of the lines, like they're like it's not even like, oh, well, this character speaks this way or that character speaks that way, which would be fine, right? Because that's a character choice, you know, that kind of thing, if they're from different regions. It's not like that. Like, there are moments where, like, a character is speaking where it feels like a classic fantasy story line that, like, you've heard before, whether it be cheesy or cringy or whatever. And then, like, right after, it feels very, like, a modern thing to say. And it's, like, it's hard to kind of marry because it's the same person saying lines that are from different regions, times. And so, again, the confusion that this movie is that elicits no response other than just numbness, you know, is carried out that way, too. Like, I don't know if they let people ad-lib because the lines were so bad and they were like, oh, you know, just say what you want to say if that's too awkward.
Can't make it any worse. Yeah, everyone either speaks really plain English or they're like screeching like a pterodactyl. It's like there's no middle ground. Yeah, there's nothing interesting about the acting choices or the way people speak. And there's that horrible dubbing with the savages in the beginning.
So bad.
Yeah. Ugh.
Yeah. I want to move on to pitches, but right before I do want to have one particular call out, which is that Nonzo Anazi, who plays Artis, the pirate friend of Conan, who is just like there when it's convenient and disappears when he's not important, is such a wasted character because he's really like a father figure to Conan, and you don't get any of that from the character. Like he's a charming guy on screen, and I'm so annoyed that he's just not around. Like he's like just such a like a sidekick when he really should be more like a mentor, and it's such a bummer.
Yeah,
I really wish he gave the opening like the opening narration. Like I wish that he was the chronicler in this scenario, the way that Mako was in the first one. I'm blanking on the sorcerer's name in the first one, but Mako, the one who does the narration and is the sorcerer and whatnot in the first movie. Like that should be this character here.
Yeah, at best he's a wingman. Wink, wink, yeah. Nudge, nudge. Get off the ship,
That's true.
lady.
Oh yeah,
Ronan.
But
and friend who arm wrestles. There's arm wrestling in this movie, guys. It has everything. Arm wrestling for wenches.
It had potential because it had good actors. It had a good budget. I mean, it was $90 million. It wasn't like they were like barely making this movie.
It was $90 million?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
That's not huge compared to like some.
I was thinking like 20 million while I was watching it. And
right.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, it could, because like there were different director choices. Like I'm curious because we kind of dodged a bullet because it was supposed to be Brett Ratner. But before that, Rodriguez was an example, or Robert Rodriguez was brought up as a potential director. And like they could have done this movie at 20 million and it would have been better.
Yeah.
Probably.
And he would have done the gore better.
Yeah. But at least we didn't get Ratner because I've seen his Hercules and like that's worse than this movie. This movie is mostly boring. It's not that bad. Like it's just dull and you're like, why did they make this movie? It's so annoying. But if this was the only Conan the Barbarian movie ever, we'd be like, well, that was a missed opportunity, but moving on with our lives. But it doesn't have to be. And I am curious what our pitches are. So Jason, you are the guest. Would you like to go first or would you rather have one of us take the lead?
Okay, yeah. So the way I would change this movie. So, we can use a lot of the existing elements, keep Momoa. The general look of the whole thing is fine. We can keep that. Let's just say we're going to keep all the same actors. There's a scene early in the movie where Conan is freeing a village when it cuts to like, present day, and present day in the movie. And you don't know, as a viewer, I didn't know if Conan was freeing the village or if he was like raiding the village because he was a barbarian. And I feel like, a movie where it spends time with Conan coming to terms with his barbarian instincts versus, helping people. Maybe he learns of, some kind of evil where, he wants to free villages and that has impact. And, maybe, Conan the Liberator or something like that. That was one small scene that I thought really worked and I liked it. And, if the movie kept going in that direction, that could have worked really well.
I got to tell you, like, there's going to be some parallels then when we get to mine, because I also sort of felt that was a good element for the character. And
I also like the pirate direction a lot. But I felt like that was going to be another pitch, so I'm gonna stay away from that one. But I felt like just it needed to dive into the character more, and I felt like wrestling with his barbarian instincts is the way to go with that, because it's like why is Conan different from a generic barbarian archetype, and I feel like it needed to answer that question. So that's the way I'd go with it, and yeah.
All right. Can I piggyback off that one since I've got some similar notes?
Please, yes.
All right. So I had to. So again, way too much fucking talking in this movie, just in general. The opening narration I would keep way shorter. If I could have it be artists, that would be awesome. But if they're dead set on Morgan Freeman, just play it as that's the older version of the character. Like I could live with that being like kind of fine. Or at least that works as a headcanon, but keep it way shorter. So instead of like the whole exposition about the crown and all that shit, because like, holy crap, like, do we have to explain the entire plot of the movie before we get into the movie? Like, I realize that is sometimes a thing, but it's too much in this movie. It is way too much. So I'd have it be like, in between the years when the oceans drank Atlantis and the rise of the son of Ares, there was an age undreamed of when shining kingdoms lay across the world. None rose higher than the towers of Acheron, but that ascension was on the backs of slaves and dark magic. But all such poisoned foundations eventually crumble, and their dark magics were lost to time, and a new age of barbarism begins, and at which point we get a crack of the whip, and then like we're in that village and we're focusing on the slavers right there. So that's how we open the movie. And then all of a sudden these like barbarians start attacking and just murdering people. And we can focus on maybe like a scared mother and her child, while like she's in chains and all these people are being murdered around her. Like she was being tortured up until this point, but now there's like fire and just violence, and emerging through the smoke and fire is this barbaric figure who like takes down a guard with his sword and then raises his blade up. And the woman is like screaming and terrified, and the blade comes down and severs her chains. And then we like get our first clean shot as it like follows up the sword, and we see Momoa as Conan. And this is like a nice inversion of that trope. Like, we've opened like all these movies with like, oh, look at this peaceful village, they're being attacked by barbarians, and now we're setting it up like, no, the barbarians are the good guys here, or at the very least are not necessarily the bad ones. Like, the raiders here are like stopping the slavery part of things, and I think that's a good like character point for him. And then we can have this sort of like, they go off and party, you know, with winches and what, like, not like it happens in this movie. But in that, what I would kind of like to do is have Artis, like, because he has this point where he talks about the Tower of the Elephant, which is like a classic Conan story. He's like giving this whole like story, and the crowd is enraptured by him. And I'd like to have him then like do a shorter version of the Test of Manhood story about Conan, like having Artis be the one telling it, and keep it real fucking short. You know, he talks about like this man when he was a boy, like, and like start with like some exposition to sort of set it up so that we don't need to spend all this time with Ron Perlman, and then get into that whole sequence, and you can have that action beat, and that's fun. But you can jump cut faster between it all because it's a story being told, and we cut back to him. And like maybe like, you know, one of the wenches that he sort of like gets really close with is like asking about his hands, like why is his hand so burned, or rather actually why did he leave his home? Like, if he had earned such a like esteem in his home, like why did he leave the North? Why has Artis been riding with him since he was barely a man? And Conan can just say like, that's not my home anymore, and then like gets up and like walks away. Or rather, pardon me, he says that's not my home anymore, and like it looks like he's going to like react negatively to the woman. Instead, he like catches the hand of a pickpocket who's grabbing at his pocket, and he like pulls it out, or pulls the guy up. And this is how we get introduced to Elishan, the thief in this movie, who is not used a lot, but it's the actor is, I'm gonna butcher this name. It's Saeed Taghmaoui. I definitely just destroyed that. But he was also popping up.
He's one of those actors. Yeah, you see in every movie. I looked up his name too.
Yeah, he was in Wonder Woman. The 2016 Wonder Woman movie, the big one, not 84. And before that, he was in G.I. Joe: Rise of Cobra. So, like I said, half the cast was in that movie, including young Conan, who played the young Snake Eyes in that movie because he just played young action heroes. That actor.
Oh wow.
But anyway, so he pulls him up, and the Elishan can be like, "Oh, Conan! I'm sorry, I wouldn't have picked your pocket if I knew it was you." It's like, I owe you my life, man. And he goes like, now you owe me your life twice. It's like, all right. Well, perhaps I can pay that down a little bit. And at which point, Conan could be like, well, what trinkets could you possibly barter with? It's like, not trinkets, a name, one I know you'll want to hear. Conan goes like, talk. And it's Kalar Zim. And Conan like rises up, and he's like breathing hard, and like you can have like Artis like trying to like calm him down, like knowing that like this is a name that's important to Conan, because it should just be known already. And then the thief can be like, he's like, word has it that he has completed the crown, and that he is on his way. He has found the last of the bloodline of Acheron. He's on his way to a monastery. It's a 2-day hard ride from here, and Conan could like tell Artis like, set sail as you had planned. I will depart at once. And we sort of set up him kind of fleeing into the night. And what I'd love to do is like have Conan riding from Messentia, the city where they're all partying, and you see like the lights in the background, and he's like a silhouette riding into the fog of the night, and then that fog fades into the hookah smoke of the monk at the monastery, like predicting that a warrior is going to come. And we can kind of have the monastery scene play out roughly the same. Like most of the problems I have with how the monastery looks and whatnot is that it is super white, and also like super, like I said, like all the sets come from Rome. And I would love if it looked a little more exotic, a little bit less like classical Greece, rather antiquity. It looked like it's got that Greco-Roman style of architecture to it, because they're clearly using the same sets, and everyone's wearing like effectively togas, and it like just looks like a different movie from the Barbarian stuff. I'd rather like have some degrees of exoticism to it, but they're probably going to keep casting the conventionally attractive blonde who at the time I think was married to the head of Netflix, or somewhere in that ballpark. Anyway, so move on from there. So we get the same sort of like monastery type scene. She escapes the same basic way. I find it really weird, the exposition when their Fasir, the head monk, is being tortured. Like when he's like, your wife almost did this whole thing. Like either the monk should know nothing and that they've been protecting this like bloodline here for a long time and have been very cut off from the outside world, or she should have been brought there explicitly when the crown started being assembled and like maybe her family was killed and she was brought as a child, and we should say that out loud and like make it very clear that they were protecting this one girl, because like if it's just the family that was living at this monastery this whole time, there should be more than just one, or they should have just killed her. Or like why is it just her blood and no one else? Like, why is she the pure blood in this? And how could anyone find that out? Like, there would have to be some sort of logic as to how that bloodline has been descended as such. And either it's a protected bloodline at the monastery, or it wasn't at the monastery, and this one last child was brought to the monastery to protect it after some kind of invasion. Maybe early on he found Zim found the last of this bloodline, which was like a small village or something, and unfortunately everyone fucking died, except for one. Some scenario where he failed earlier on and thought he would never find it.
Yeah, they need a better way to determine the bloodline rather than the lady with the claws just tasting it. That
that's good and creepy when you get to the moment, but like how they would, like, why would they even go there? Like, why would people even know about the blood of Acheron if it supposedly died out 1,000 years ago?
Right.
Like, why does any of that make sense? It doesn't. And I just feel like they need to, like, flesh that scene out a bit more. And I don't love the idea of Fasir being like, she would have enslaved all of Hyboria. There's a lot of bad fucking people out here. I don't know why anyone's necessarily worse than another. Like, sure. Anyway, the facing happens the same basic way. When he ties up both the barbarian chieftain and Tamara, we can have a whole thing where he flashes back to his dad talking about the importance of patience, and so we can have a little bit of the forging of the sword kind of scene in there, and like you can even do the Batman Begins break the ice thing, and it's like the end line could be like, Conan, you need to like understand the value of waiting, and then we cut back to Conan just polishing his sword as the sun is starting to come up, waiting for Kalir Zim so that he can use it as an ambush kind of scenario. Basically, I'm trying to like put all these, like, get the idea that there's just stories about Conan all throughout. I like the trebuchet scene. I think that like that was fairly a fun way to like send a message. And the desert people fight, like the sand constructs. Yes. It's appropriate sword and sorcery kind of magic kind of scene. Like, that's actually like kind of fine. It's really weird because I don't feel like I get the sense that where he is, like that castle or whatever they're at, because it feels kind of like a western town that they go to, with scaffolding and shit, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh no, this is actually a fortress on the edge of water. Like, we needed a few more sweeping shots to sort of set up that he was meeting at some remote on a cliffside outpost, as opposed to, like I said, it kind of just feels like a desert town, like, meet me at the OK Corral to do the exchange. But that scene overall works fine, aside from the dumb transforming sword. It should just be, like I said, a double scimitar, or he should have two swords, whatever. It's such a gimmick, because like in the two sword configuration, it doesn't work better as a sword. You're not going to have a harder time cutting through someone with the two blades that way. Like, it just doesn't make any sense.
You really have an emotional feeling about this, like.
Well, and then for it to have like gears that it like rotates in shape and so forth, like that, like, I mean, one, this is supposed to be set like 10,000 years ago, and two, like, it's not practical now. Like, you can make that weapon now, but no one would use it because it would break when you try to hit someone with it. Like, the handle would break.
I agree with you. You're having a lot of feelings about it, and I'm just acknowledging that you're having a lot of feelings.
It's just
they should give the double jointed sword to one of the sub bosses, and then it won't matter as much. That might have been a better use for it.
Yeah, it feels so bad because it is the main bad guy, and you're like, why does he have the dumb weapon? Like, if he was a two-sword fighter, cool, that's fine. I'm even fine with it where it's like that, where the two swords like are pressed up against each other and he pulls them apart kind of thing. But the fact that they've got like the two spaced out blades is why it just... And again, it has like a gear sound when it like rotates into like two sword configuration and then splits apart and then reconfigure. Like, I don't. It's a bad weapon.
I agree.
It's not cool.
No one's arguing with you. I just go on.
Anyway, so they eventually flee. They jump into the water the same way as before. Rather than like looking over the edge and the ship just waiting for them there, like calling up to them, I'd rather them just blind jump into the water and we don't get the establishing shot of the ship. And then when they're like treading water as they dive into the water and they like are treading water to like come up, and then all of a sudden a rope gets tossed to them, and like sort of establish that this was their plan, because it's just such a weird establishing shot of artists just being like, come on, jump, when it happens. I would rather have it be like a little surprise that he was waiting there and that was the plan. Get back onto the ship. Artis, when he is talking to Tamara at some point, he goes into way too much time talking about Born in Battle anyway, so this is the time to drop that flashback if you're going to use that flashback, and keep it shorter. So we're not spending time, like, these should be not full scenes. Like, this is where we're getting like music video montages of like Conan was born in battle, and you can see like Ron Perlman clutching his wife. You can see him pulling up the sword with like a speed up kind of motion or animation on it, where like the sword rises and then like plunges deep, and then you can have the shot of the child being pulled out, and not set as if it was real time. Like, this is intentionally artists, like maybe even doing some voiceover talking about it. And then we cut back to the modern time. We get the fight on the ship. He shouldn't make a reference to like his village, because I don't want Conan to have said anything yet about that. But he gets wounded in the fight, and like they come to shore so everyone can recover, and so they can like make some repairs to the boat after they were boarded. By the way, did we see a boat that was like alongside their ship or anything?
No. I have no idea where they came from. It's like Pirates of the Caribbean. They walked through the seas like those dead ghosts. Yeah, they just kind of teleport there.
But so like while Conan's being is healing, they should have like tents on shore and so forth. Tamara should come to him. This is when he should tell the story of how his father died, because she can be like looking at the wounds on his hands that he like held up. Like when he encountered Zim, when Zim's like, "Who are you?" he should have just raised his hand, and then Zim should have been like, "Ah, Sumerian," rather than being like, "You left me to die with my father." Again, just way too much time where Conan talks. And then this is where we should get a flashback, but not to a pastoral village where Ron Perlman is just testing these boys and also just a friendly blacksmith. He should have been like the main lieutenant for Kalar Zim. Like, he should have, like, it should have been a warring party that Conan, having earned the privilege of being an adult, was part of. And they should have like been attacking villages, and maybe they find the first piece of the crown together, and Conan's father, doesn't want to murder the children of the village. He's like, put them in slavery, do whatever, but don't kill them all. And Zim's like, no, because they're going to come back. And that's when Corin breaks with Zim and is then left to die in this like burning blacksmith fire, and Conan barely survives it. Like, that sequence should have been them breaking away, and that's why Conan knows who Zim is, not just like has heard of him, like actually fought alongside him as a boy, and has been traveling ever since, and no longer feels attached to his people because they were enthralled by Zim. Like, maybe like there's this idea that like the people who didn't, like, his father was left to die, but the rest are like us alongside of him. It's not just like, oh, look at these innocent people that were wiped out. Like, it was a barbarian tribe that was swept up in this sort of warlord's rise to power. So he tells the story. We get this as a flashback. Again, it can be more music video style as a result. It can be like more rapid fire kind of shots on all this stuff, cutting to like the important moments, as opposed to the rules of like, if you're in the scene, it has to be like a little bit slower and establishing, because Conan can be talking it over and, you know, to give some exposition. After telling the story, we cut back to like Tamara rubbing his palm, and this is when they make whoopee. And then in the morning, the boat is getting ready to go, but they should just be on everyone should have had tents on the side of the, like, on the shoreline, where they were like gathering supplies, making repairs, etc. And while Conan is like kind of getting up and getting ready to like continue sailing on, Tamara should have like a spy come up behind her, maybe like hand over the mouth, blade to her throat, and pull her away, kind of thing. As opposed to like she's just walking in the woods and just gets attacked.
She was trying to make it back to the boat because she had she had a time limit.
But why did they leave?
Why
was she allowed to be by herself when she's the most important thing in this movie?
Because someone was a great wingman. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Go get yours, girl.
Who cares? Why did they go so far to have sex? It's not like Conan didn't clearly have sex in front of other people on his boat before. Like, you can't tell me that he didn't bring a hooker back at some point.
Yeah, well, yeah, no, of course.
Sex in that weird
sailors.
Yeah, so I'm just saying, like, have it be like they have a bunch of tents on the beach. Like I said, they were making some repairs, and that's when they have to like sail to Argolan to go find the thief again. Who, you know, when he left, it was just like, if you need him to find me, I'll be in Argolan. Okay, cool. I'll see you later. Now is the time where we see him later. When he goes to encounter him, he starts a big fight, and rather than just like him showing up and being like, I owe this man my life, and then like move on to a totally new scene. Like, it should be like there's a big bar fight where Conan is trying to find him, and then there's like a slow clap that kind of breaks it up when Elishan shows up and is just like, I owe this man so much. And then we can actually do a flashback where we show the time where they encountered the noseless guy, and like that scene can happen sort of here now. And just, again, to keep this sort of theme of like, there's just all these tales about Conan, and we're watching one of them right now, but everyone's had adventures with Conan. This isn't a guy he just met in this movie. This is a guy he's met a long time ago, and they've encountered each other a few times, like earlier in the movie, sure, but like other times as well. So we get that sort of sequence right there. It doesn't need to be as directly connected to the immediate plot because it doesn't really have like much bearing on the actual chain of events of this movie. So it might as well have it be just one of these many tales of Conan. We go to Act 3 and it plays out similarly. I think that here's the big thing. Tamara transforming into the sorceress needs to, one, matter, because when it happens, she is dangling, and it's like, well, why does it matter if you transform? Like, you can't do anything. You're gonna, like... you turned evil and you're still hanging from a chain, whatever. Like, you could have been whatever. It should be that Conan has to murder her, and when he murders her, that's when Zim, like, who should transform more into kind of some sort of monstrosity with the crown on, like, it should have this like kind of like, it should grow into him, and like the octopus tentacles should be like growing out of the back of his head, and there, you know, it should be this like very like Old One kind of like vibe, because like Howard was really big into like chthonic type lore, because Howard and Lovecraft were friends, so like they included references to each other's stuff in their works. There's Hyborian references in Lovecraft as well, so we should have that sort of like vibe that he's being taken over by this like impossible geometric entity, and then when his newly reborn wife is killed in front of him, he's so shocked that there's a moment where he becomes more human, and that's when the sword goes through his back and through his chest, and that's when Conan has killed him and then drops him off the ledge.
I like that ending. That would be a lot better.
So now Conan then leaves. He can leave the castle burning, so we can get Conan walking forward in silhouette, and he gets back up on his boat with Artis, and they're like, all right, well, where to next? And Artis says, we've been hired to sail to the black coast of Kush. There is a pirate queen named Balit who wants to hire as many mercenaries as possible. And then we can just sort of get a vibe like, all right, and now the next story is going to happen next. And as it sails off, and you could have like Artis or Morgan Freeman or whatever give like, and like, but that's a story for another day. Yeah,
or Arnold.
Or Arnold, yeah.
I'm still holding out for that Arnold King Conan movie. I hope that eventually happens.
That'd be fun. I can't say too much because Pat Edwards and I have been playing around with that one.
So now I have to follow that. New rule: case always has to go last.
You agreed to come on as co-host.
No, I did. New rule as co-host: case always has to give his pitch last. No, it's fine. I will say that I did not think as much about the middle of the movie as I thought about fixing the beginning. I actually thought I could still keep some of the exposition in the front. It didn't bug me that much. But I wanted to fix the birthing story, and I would actually do all of the intro much faster. So what I would do is I would show Conan and Conan's mom and dad in a battle and, swinging swords, killing people. And Conan's mom realizes, oh, I'm having labor pains. And she would find a place to secure herself, call her husband, let him know, and he would defend whatever shack she's in front of, just slaying people left and right. And she would just pull that baby out of herself, because that's how fucking badass she is. She's going to give labor in the middle of a barbarian raid on an opposing, clan, and she's going to give birth to that baby, and he's going to come in covered with blood and go, "You good?" And she's going to go, "Yes, his name is Conan." That's the beginning. So, and then the rest of it is very short moments. He's a little bit older. He's learning how to fight from both of his parents. You can even do a little bit of a test. I don't really care about it. But basically, the thing is that you jump to his first official raid. He's side by side with his parents. He's really excited. This is the first time he's being allowed to do it. They're going against a different tribe of barbarians. They're going to get something. And while they're there, because afterwards, of course, you take all the spoils of war, Conan finds a box with a bone. And he doesn't know what it is, but it's a fancy box, and he decides to take it with him. This happens to be one piece of the mask, which happens to be the undoing of his entire tribe. And that's what brings it. But it's not like the final piece. It is simply a piece. And he realizes that he has basically murdered his entire clan. It's like when the bad guys roll in, he is basically the reason why everyone who he's known has to die. And his mom and he, they escape, and he feels that it's not a honorable thing. And she's like, we've got to live to fight another day. And they get to the shores of water, and there's an ocean beneath him, and she just looks at him and she just tosses him off because she's real fucking strong. And she goes down fighting, but he ends up in the ocean, and he's found by his adopted dad and the Pirate King. And he never really talks about what happened, because he knows that he's to blame for the fact that his entire clan faced this awful thing. And basically a lot of the first half of the movie is just him doing pirating stuff, going to places, raiding it, taking the spoils of war, including the women that they free and that kind of thing. Living this life where it's more carefree. And then he starts hearing rumors in the bars that he's at with his different pirate friends about this man who's been hunting this mask. And he starts hearing, and the pictures, someone draws him an image, and it's very much like the piece of the person who came to kill. So this is how it makes sense that he doesn't know this dude's name, right? Because he's been on the sea. He's not, he's in port once in a while. He's got news, but he didn't really know that a mask was being made. He just knew, bad shit was happening. But he's been a mercenary. He's been a pirate. He's been, living his own life, ignoring the things he did that were, basically brought down his entire world as a child. And so denial's very strong. And so then I'm going to piggyback with Case, and I'm going to say that eventually he learns the name from the pickpocket. He figures out that this is the thing, and he's just you know what? I got to go set this right. So it's okay for vengeance to come in, right? Because now it's other story. Sure, let's do the vengeance. Jump forward. I would say for the end, because the middle, I don't care, except, yes, make the sex scene make more sense. Don't let her leave the boat for no reason. And I agree with Case on everything he said about the monastery. I just did not like the set at all, did not like the vibe. And I do think that it would be cool for her to also be from a small town or that kind of thing that was wiped out. They didn't know someone was and then he found out, the bad dude found out that, yeah,
She's just a small town girl living in a lonely world.
Yeah, exactly.
She survived the midnight raid.
Exactly. I mean, play the song, write it. And I would say, like, have him, like, face giant monsters. Have him face, like, these, like, crazy, like, shit, like, while he's, like, searching for these things. And also, yes, make the mini bosses, like, however, like, well, I don't even know if my version would have them, but if the mini bosses are still there, give them actual kingdoms to destroy. Give them, like, things that he can, like, blow up. Let this revenge be, like, everyone who had a hand in destroying my people need to go. Like, every single one. Like burning, like a freaking, like, I want him to feel like, oh gosh, why are words not in Keanu Reeves? I want to feel like he just lost his dog and he's Keanu Reeves.
John Wick.
Yeah, I want him to be John Wick. I couldn't think of John Wick's name. For some reason, I kept thinking Constantine, and I'm like, no, wrong movie. It's like, but I want him to be like John. Like, I want to feel the level of revenge I felt at John Wick, like, in this. Like, I want Conan to, like, finally be facing the thing that hurt him by wanting to burn the world, and, like, just kind of thing. And then the end, you're so right about her and, like, the sorcery. I say, I mean, maybe she starts floating. Like, why is she still hanging? She's transforming into, like, the ultimate sorceress necromancer. Like, why is she still hanging there? But I kind of think it would be more interesting if, and because I just think that she was so wasted, if Rose McGowan's character, after being rebuffed by her father and not wanting to, be fucked by her father, instead, like, took over as main baddie. Like, I think that would have been a lot more interesting, because there is a sense that she wants to become her mother. Like, she's like, I'm everything that she was. Like, I actually even look like her. Like, in the flashback, her mom is played by Rose McGowan. So it's like, I look exactly like her. I am my mother. Like, what are you talking about? Like, this power should be mine. She's dead. I'm alive. My power has grown. So I should be the person who has the power.
So actually, this is a thing I kept wondering about throughout this whole movie, of the whole, like, pure blood thing and the relationship with the crown. And I kept thinking, like, are they, like, should they be implying that, like, Marique, Rose McGowan's character, should she be part of that lineage too? And maybe the reason why Zim doesn't want his daughter to be the blood for the crown is that would mean that his daughter would be also the mother, and he doesn't want to fuck his daughter.
I think so.
Like, that's already a thing anyway. And so maybe, like, that could be the implication that, like, she's always wanted it to be her blood that goes into the crown, but instead they were trying to find someone else who was also of the bloodline. And maybe that's why, like, then at the very end, like, McGowan then, like, takes up the crown and becomes both, like, fills her soul with her mother as well as hers, and becomes, like, this ultimate dark magic.
Yeah, I think that would have been so much cooler. And, like, because honestly, she's the only one who, like, has any kind of, like, otherworldliness to her in this, like, whole boring saga of a movie. And so, like, it would have been, like, really cool to just have her be like, you know what? I actually do not need you. Because if this is not how it's going to be, like, I'm just going to always be your lackey, like, always trying to please you. Like, I'm done with that. I'm done with pleasing you. And then, like, she could have turned into, like, some sort of giant monster that would have been, like, so incredible with claws, because she already, like, clearly loves them. I mean, since a child.
A giant octopus with claws.
Absolutely. Why not? Why the frick not? Like, and then have Conan have to face, like, this. Maybe even have the pirates show up like a freaking army, like, just like, okay, we're rolling through. Like, let's do this. Let's, like, throw catapults of fire at this shit. Let's hack it off. Like, just have, like, a real, actual, big monster fight at the end. Because, like, I mean, like, I want to see tentacles cut. I want to see blood squirting places. I want Conan. Like, I want to see, like, and at the end, like, I want to see him, like, covered in blood, exhausted, and, like, the pure blood girl just, like, lying on the floor, like, being like, is it over? Like, just, like, and him just being like, like, grunt at her and, like, walk out. Just, like, you know, and then everyone just gets on a ship and leaves. They drop her off at her home, they wave goodbye, and they're off to the next adventure. I don't know what I would do with the middle, but definitely not what was here. Maybe along the lines of what Case did.
I'm now kind of envisioning the end being, like, this really gory version of the end of The Little Mermaid.
Yeah, why not? Like, I feel like what's missing in this movie, like, the biggest thing missing in this movie is, like, urgency and, like, an emotional push, right? Like, yeah, okay, his dad died, that's sad, but you don't really feel how sad that is. But, like, if Conan is the real reason, like, it's not like his tribe was the people who held on to the box, right? Conan is the reason. He brought this fate down on them. He basically killed his parents and his people with his actions, his thoughtless actions. Then his suppression of it, ignoring it for years, makes sense, right? Because it's something that he can't face. And then he has to face it, and then he's a man on fire. He's a man on fire who then has to, like, go to set things right, not just with, like, the world, but himself. This is his apology. And the only way he can do it is in blood. Because he's Conan.
Yeah. But also not the blood of Tamara, because I kept thinking throughout this movie, like, why don't they just kill her? And then literally no threats anymore.
Again, kill her, grind it's made of bone. It's not indestructible. Like, it's not the One Ring. Like, the One Ring you can't destroy, right? They made it indestructible. And it's said in that, like, you either have to, like, say something in the really long exposition about how they could only break it apart and can't grind it down or destroy it. Like, I'm like, why are you guys holding on to it? I don't understand. So I would actually put something in it about it being indestructible. Like, they're only allowed to break it down. And then, like, I don't know why you can't kill her. I would say, you know, you have Rose McGowan's character explain that she also has the blood, and explain that her father wants her mom back, not just her.
Right.
That would make sense.
Yeah, I think that helps make that part clear.
Yeah, I like the idea of a sudden betrayal at the end and a giant claw octopus. That would have been a much better ending. Because, yeah, Rose McGowan's character was the more compelling of the two main villains. And that would have made sense if she ended up being the final one. So,
And she has so much fun with, like, the character. She had so much fun with it. And I could see, like, I was like, you know, if I were in her position, her dad doesn't actually have any power. Like, he is a good fighter. I will give him that. But she's the person with power. Why is she taking orders from him? Like,
she wants that dick.
Well, and then he said no. So what use is he?
Yeah.
Like, you know.
Have no fury like a woman scorned, especially if it's Electra's daughter. Oh, man.
And it kind of, it fits in with, like, the original, like the way that the books were written, like, that whole idea of just, like, pulp, tits and ass, like, gore, blood, deception, like, let's just rip shit down and destroy it. Like, she would have been amazing at that. Like, it would have been great.
Yeah.
An evil sorceress for Conan to face with.
Well, it would also combat the inherent misogyny that's, like, just part of this kind of genre.
Yeah.
Like, it's really hard when you're, like, kind of setting it up where it, like, female characters in this sort of, like, pseudo time period don't feel like they have a lot of agency, and when they do, it kind of feels like it's a forced thing on it, which sucks. And it would be nice to have McGowan really take hold and be the real villain after appearing to be more of an advisor for the majority of the movie.
Right, and subservient to her father too. She spends a lot of time trying to please him, trying to make him see her value. And this is just a credit to actually the work that she did in this crappy script, because I've actually given her that much credit. Her character actually had X, Y, and Z in line, which is. Unfortunately, a lot of the characters in this movie and in this script are very two-dimensional, and they have not a lot going on.
Yeah.
So I think it would have been a more compelling ending. I would have enjoyed it. And also a giant monster getting splashed up.
Yeah. I feel like anything would have been an improvement on this movie because it was just so bland. Yeah. And I like that a lot. I really like the idea of a giant monster and sort of working that angle out. I think it's really nice. I think there's somewhere some sort of fusion of these that could really work as a much stronger Barbarian script than what we got. Because this movie, I mean, part of it is that if this movie didn't have the Conan license, I probably wouldn't have disliked some of the elements as much. It would have just been a generic Barbarian movie. But it also is not a movie I would have watched ever, aside from maybe in college when I was desperate for a B movie kind of thing. There's just so many better movies than this. And without the Conan license, it's not that interesting.
Yeah.
So the challenge is, how do we make it interesting? And I think we all have specified some ways that it would be a lot cooler. Make Conan morally gray, make the world a little more violent in a way that doesn't feel like it's just gore porn. If it feels like there's a purpose to it and that there's actual ramifications of everyone's actions, all good stuff, and way better than the movie that we got.
Yeah. Also, if you're going to, I mean, not that any of us kept it, but if you're going to keep the challenge in the beginning, just have the things he fights be actual animals, like giant saber-toothed tigers. Why do they have to be humanoid? It doesn't have to be savage people that from another tribe. It could literally be a pack of tigers. Literally, you could take any giant cat, any giant wolf, any giant dog, any giant saber-toothed, or a woolly mammoth that's, a boar. Boars are actually, wild boars are really dangerous, but you could have done anything, and then people could have celebrated because they would have had dinner.
It would have been a better step of progression to Conan becoming a brutal fighter rather than just instantly being able to kill any group of people since being a boy.
It was I was in the woods, I was doing this thing, I got off track, I ran into these pack animals that basically cornered me, and I took them all out, and I hauled their carcasses to town, and now we feast.
And that would have been a moment of levity too. Everybody celebrating for a bit. That would have been nice.
Yeah. Would have been really nice. It would be it's my boy! Look at this kid.
Yeah, a really proud dad.
Look at this kid. Fun. He took this down himself. I'm gonna hang these. They could have even put all the heads on spikes around while they did the barbecue pit, just the bodies, and everyone could have just been dancing and drinking, and then the baddies attack. So at the party. It would have been perfect.
Or the part,
much better.
The part of the party where everything's kind of winding down and everyone's kind of drunk and falling asleep. Then the baddies show up and everyone's a little bit more off guard. And
and actually that would have been great. Yeah. Because that would have been great, because then it would be and my dad was super drunk, and that's partially why he died.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, we keep calling characters mini-bosses and whatnot, because this movie is just a game, and it would be more fun if you were playing it than if you're watching it. As it is, it's just kind of boring. But maybe that's how it should have been ultimately, and maybe that's the kind of thing that should be a game like Drinking Quest.
Ooh, games! Let's talk about games.
Yeah.
Do you want to give a bit more of a plug?
Yeah. So, Drinking Quest is kind of like Conan, except it's really funny. It kind of parodies and skewers sword and sorcery worlds, especially things like 2011 Conan the Barbarian, which is so self-serious. I love the genre, but there needs to be something that takes that to task sometimes. So Drinking Quest is it's like Conan. It's sword and sorcery. It's very funny, and it's half RPG and half drinking game. So check out Drinking Quest 6-pack on Kickstarter, which has the first 6 games in one fancy box.
Awesome. And yeah, we'll definitely have a link to that in the description for the episode. People should check it out. I mean, the game comes highly recommended. I haven't had a chance to try it myself, but friend of the pod, Pat Edwards, raves about it. So I am excited to check out the Kickstarter, and everyone else should come support as well.
Yeah, and it's probably a much healthier drinking game than just drinking every time you're bored watching Conan 2011.
The perpetual beer funnel.
Yeah, exactly. It's like dying. Your liver
Jason,
will thank you.
Yeah. Jason, thank you again for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Really appreciate it. It was a lot of fun.
Just one more time, just give your social media plugs.
DrinkingQuest.com is my official site. I'm at Drinking Quest on Twitter, Jason Anarchy Games on Facebook, and just Jason Anarchy on Instagram.
Awesome. And Sam, where can people find you?
As always, I am the Mew of the internet, so don't find me unless you're linked in Another Pass. You can find me here on this podcast.
Yeah, you can find Another Pass on Twitter at Another Pass. You can find me on Twitter at Ksaken, and you can find all of our stuff, our old episodes and stuff to come at certainpov.com, where you can also find a link to our Discord server. We're having this call on Discord right now, but you can just come hang out, share memes. We have a lot of WandaVision spoilers, which will have just ended when this episode drops. So probably at that point we'll be moving on to the Winter Soldier or Falcon and the Winter Soldier. But come, just hang out if you like anything that we do. If you like Reignite and Mass Effect stuff. If you like Let's Rewatch and rewatching old movies. If you like Scruffy Nerf Herders with like D&D games / Star Wars stuff. All that's at certainpov.com. And yeah, just come check it out. Great shows. Sam, take us home.
Sure. Next time on the show, we'll be talking about Highlander 2, The Quickening. But until then, if you enjoyed the show, pass it on.
Thanks for listening to Certain Point of View's Another Pass podcast. Don't miss an episode. Just subscribe and review the show on iTunes. Just go to certainpov.com.
Yeah, we'll run Craigbot to record the stream, but it has crashed on occasion, and I would prefer not to have that screw things up.
Yeah, it's definitely let us down. Poor Craig.
Yeah, I've done one podcast where the audio was lost for whatever reason, and it was like, okay, always double record. Oh, there we go.
Yeah, always double.
Okay, all right.
And the other side happens too, where someone's computer dies, and fortunately we had the stream feed covered.
Yeah.
So
okay, yeah, so I'm recording from my end. Good to go.
Are you good on your end, Sam?
Oh yeah, I'm recording already.
Man, that movie was excellent.
It really was. Totally blew my expectations away.
I know, right? Now I really want to tell everyone about it. But I'm not sure how.
Yeah. If only there was a podcast dedicated to reviewing films and discussing the latest news and trailers on upcoming films. That would be nice.
Yes, for sure. And we can call it The Cineguy Show.
What? No. It will be called Real Movie Critic Unleashed.
No. How about Cineguy featuring Real Movie Critic?
How about the Real Movie Critic and his sidekick, the Cineguy?
CG and RMC.
RMC and CG!
The Real Movie Critic versus the Cineguy. Only at certainpov.com or wherever you get your podcasts.
You're going down, critic.
Bring it on, guy.
CPOV. CertainPOV.com.